Ladies and gentlemen, there's something mysterious about silence. It's not emptiness. It's not the absence of sound. It's a presence. It's the strength of someone who knows who they are. It's the confidence of someone who doesn't need to prove anything. And in a world that runs on reactions, outrage, and replies, silence has become one of the most powerful responses you can give. See, when people throw negativity at you, the first instinct is to defend, to react, to clap back. You want to prove a point. You want to explain yourself. But sometimes silence says more than any well-crafted argument ever could. Sometimes silence is not the pause before the storm. It's the calm that is the storm. People talk. They always will. If you succeed, they'll question your rise. If you fall, they'll question your worth. If you stay the same, they'll say you're irrelevant. That's the game. But what if you chose not to play? What if you stopped trying to explain your every move, your every choice, your every failure? What if you walked through the noise like it wasn't even there? Not because it didn't hurt, not because you didn't care, but because your purpose was louder than their opinion. There's a strange kind of elegance in restraint. It's the kind of strength you don't find in those who shout from rooftops, but in those who keep moving forward without stopping to answer every stone thrown their way. Because here's the truth. The ones who truly rise don't by shouting louder. They rise by flying higher. And the air up there, it's too quiet for nonsense. You're not here to convince people who've already made up their minds. You're not here to explain yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You are here to live, to build, to create, to dream, to fail and rise again. And none of that requires commentary from the sidelines. Let them underestimate you. Let them talk. Let them assume. While they're busy crafting their narratives, you focus on writing your story. Because stories live longer than opinions. And you weren't born to be a reply. You were born to be a statement. There's dignity in silence. There's wisdom in choosing not to argue with people who are not on your level of understanding. It's like playing chess with someone who's throwing the pieces. You could waste time explaining the rules, or you could walk away and go win somewhere else. Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every comment deserves a comeback. Have you ever noticed how storms make noise, but the stars shine in silence? That's not a coincidence. Some of the most powerful forces in life don't need to raise their voice. The ocean doesn't explain itself. The moon doesn't apologize for outshining the night. And you. If you could just embrace the power of silence, you'd find a kind of freedom the noise can never offer. Your silence can be your revolution. It can be your proof. It can be your strategy. Because sometimes when they expect you to lash out and you don't, when they expect you to crumble and you stand tall in stillness, it shakes them more than any retort ever could. Your silence becomes the mirror where their negativity reflects back at them. Silence is not always peace. It's preparation. It's clarity. It's the moment where you gather yourself and say, let the world scream. I'm still here. I'm still focused. I'm still moving. And when they see you succeed with ever engaging in their drama, they'll realize you were never playing the same game. You were building an empire while they were building arguments. There's a beauty in knowing your worth so deeply that you don't feel the need to prove it. You don't lower yourself to their level. You don't trade your crown for a comment. You don't shrink just because someone else feels small. You rise quietly, consistently, relentlessly. And maybe they won't understand your silence. Maybe they'll think you've got nothing to say. But you and I both know that silence is loaded. It's not emptiness. It's depth. It's not fear. It's focus. It's the sound of someone who's already decided that their peace is more valuable than any argument. So the next time they come at you with their noise, with their doubts, with their poison, just remember this: you're not here to echo the cause. You're here to be the calm. You're not here to wrestle in the dirt. You're here to rise above it. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply say nothing and let your silence speak everything. Silence is not weakness, it's controlled power. That's a truth most people misunderstand. We've been conditioned to believe that silence means surrender, that it's a sign you've given up, or worse, that you have nothing to say. But the reality is, sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who doesn't feel the need to announce it. The one who holds back, who observes, who absorbs the noise without letting it disturb their center. That person is not weak. That person is walking in strength most people don't have. It's easy to react. It's easy to lash out, to snap, to retaliate when someone challenges you or throws negativity your way. But it takes strength to stay quiet. Not because you're afraid to speak, but because you know your voice is too valuable to waste on nonsense. You know that your energy is currency and you're not about to spend it on something that doesn't deserve it. That's not weakness. That's control. That's discipline. That's power dressed in silence. See, people who constantly need to explain themselves are often seeking validation. They want to be understood. They want to be liked. They want to be seen. But when you reach a place where your peace matters more than being understood, you begin to choose your silence over your need to prove anything. And that's the shift. That's when your silence becomes power. Because you're no longer driven by ego, you're driven by purpose. You're no longer controlled by people's opinions, you're anchored in your own identity. Sometimes saying nothing is the most strategic move you can make. When people come at you with negativity, they're not always looking for truth. They're looking for reaction. They're trying to pull you into their chaos, drag you into their drama, distract you from your path. But if you don't engage, if you don't play their game, they lose control. They don't know what to do with your silence because it exposes them. It reflects their own noise back at them. You're not matching their energy. You're rising above it. There's a kind of quiet confidence that noise all by itself. You walk into a room and people feel it. You don't have to shout to be noticed. You don't have to respond to be respected. You don't have to clap back to win. When you know who you are, you don't have to prove it. You carry yourself with such calm assurance that even your silence demands attention. That's power. That's strength in its most refined form. You don't have to answer every accusation. You don't have to defend every decision. You don't have to justify every move. Because the people who matter will understand, and the people who don't were never really listening anyway. Silence is your way of saying, I see it. I hear it. I'm just not giving it my energy. And that's not weakness. That's wisdom. In fact, some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who've learned to stay silent when their emotions want to roar. They've trained themselves to pause when others would pounce. They've chosen dignity over drama. And while the world may not always understand their silence, time eventually reveals the power behind it. Because silence doesn't mean you're not moving. It means you're moving smart. It means you're focused. It means you're building something that doesn't require a reaction, only results. People will try to test you. They'll try to poke at you, provoke you, question you, and they'll expect you to fight back. But when you don't, when you simply keep walking with your high and your spirit steady, it disarms them. It confuses them. Because they were counting on your reaction to validate their attack. And when they don't get it, they're left wrestling with their own noise. You don't need to be the loudest to be the strongest. You just need to know when to speak and when to let your silence speak for you. Because silence, when used wisely, is not a retreat. It's a strategy. It's the space where clarity grows. It's where emotions settle and strength gathers. And from that place, you make your real moves, not out of anger, not out of hurt, but out of wisdom. It's not that you can't speak. It's that you've learned the value of not always having to. You've realized that every time you react, you give someone access to your peace. And you've reached a point where your peace is too expensive to give away for free. That's power. That's knowing your worth. That's silence wrapped in strength. So, when they call you weak for not reacting, smile. When they say you're avoiding conflict, let them talk. You're not avoiding anything. You're rising above it. And there's nothing weak about that. In fact, it's the most powerful response you could ever give. The louder the world gets, the more strength it takes to stay quiet. That's the paradox most people miss. In a world that celebrates noise, rewards outrage, and thrives on reactions, silence is often mistaken for invisibility. But silence isn't a lack of presence. It's proof that you don't need external volume to validate your internal value. When everything around you is screaming for attention, staying grounded in quiet confidence becomes an act of rebellion. And not just rebellion, it becomes a rare kind of resilience. It doesn't take much strength to yell back when someone raises their voice. It doesn't take discipline to post a reaction, clap back online, or throw shade in return. What takes strength is to remain composed when everything inside you wants to respond. What takes maturity is holding your peace when chaos tries to invade your space. The easy route is noise. The real strength lies in stillness. When the pressure is high, when critics are loud, and the spotlight is harsh, choosing not to be pulled into the volume shows how secure you really are. We live in a time where everyone feels the need to say something. Social media has made it so easy to share every thought, every opinion, every response in real time. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. Real power is knowing you could say something and choosing not to. You could reply to the gossip, respond to the rumor, clear up the lie, correct the disrespect. But you don't, because your destiny is louder than the noise and your future is bigger than the drama. When the noise around you increases, it's easy to feel like you have to match it. You think you need to raise your voice to be heard, to defend yourself, to be taken seriously. But the truth is, when you really know who you are, you don't compete with the noise. You rise above it. The storm might be loud, but the mountain doesn't move. The waves may crash, but the anchor holds. And when the world starts shouting, your silence can be the echo that reminds everyone you're unshaken. People often confuse loudness with strength. But look around. The strongest forces in life don't make a sound. Gravity is silent. Time doesn't shout. Growth doesn't announce itself. It just happens. Quietly, consistently, powerfully. In the same way, your strength doesn't need to be broadcasted to be real. Sometimes, it's in your ability to stay silent when everything in you wants to speak. That's not silence rooted in fear. It's silence rooted in focus. There will be moments when your name is thrown around in rooms you've never stepped into, when people misunderstand your heart, misinterpret your intentions, or manipulate your truth. And your first instinct may be to fix it, to speak up, to clear the air. But not every accusation requires your attention. Not every critic deserves your energy. Sometimes the silence says it all. Sometimes the fact that you didn't respond carries more weight than anything you could have said. When the noise gets loud, it's often because you're getting closer to something important. Distraction is loud when you're on the edge of breakthrough. Opposition raises its volume when you're about to level up. So instead of seeing the noise as a threat, start recognizing it as a sign. It means you're doing something that matters. It means your presence is shaking something, even if you haven't said a word. And in those moments, staying quiet isn't cowardice, it's confidence. There's a level of inner strength that can only be built in silence. When you're not explaining yourself, you're building yourself. When you're not clapping back, you're leveling up. When you're not trying to be seen, you're becoming someone worth noticing. It's in the quiet moments that your vision becomes clearer. It's in the stillness that your decisions become sharper. And when you finally move, you move with purpose, not pressure. Anyone can make noise, but not everyone can hold silence. That takes trust. Trust in yourself, in your journey, in the process. It takes faith that what's ahead of you is more important than what's being said about you. It's believing that results speak louder than replies, And that character speaks louder than chaos. And when you walk in that, you don't need to raise your voice. You just keep walking, and eventually the noise behind you fades while your life speaks volumes. So don't let the loudness of the world shake your stillness. Don't let the volume of others push you into performing for their approval. Stay grounded. Stay focused. Let them talk. Let them shout. You've got work to do. You've got dreams to build. And if that means staying quiet for a while, so be it. Because the louder it gets out there, the more powerful it becomes in here, in that quiet place inside you that knows exactly who you are and where you're going. And that silence, that unshaken stillness, that's where your strength lies. You don't always have to explain your peace to people who thrive on chaos. That's one of the most freeing lessons you'll ever learn. There will be people who don't understand how you can stay calm while everything around you seems to be falling apart. They'll look at your silence and assume you're indifferent. They'll misinterpret your calm as carelessness, but they don't realize that your peace didn't come cheap. It was earned, fought for, protected through pain, setbacks, and deep personal growth. And now that you have it, you're not about to trade it for someone else's storm. There are people who feel powerful only when they can pull you into their dysfunction. They live off drama. They breathe conflict. And when they see someone like you, calm, grounded, unmoved, it unsettles them because your peace threatens the control they thought they had. Your silence disrupts the energy they're used to manipulating. They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't take the bait. So they'll push harder. They'll test you. Try to get a reaction, but you don't have to flinch. You don't have to fight, because peace doesn't argue. It just is. You reach a point in life where you stop trying to make everyone understand your choices, your boundaries, your healing. You stop needing to justify why you no longer respond the way you used to. Growth changes your response patterns. When you're at peace with yourself, you no longer feel the urge to prove anything to anyone. You're not cold. You're just clear. Clear on what matters. Clear on what drains you. Clear on what you're no longer available for. And that clarity shows up as silence. Not because you're disconnected, but because you've finally connected to what's worth protecting. There's a reason peace is often described as quiet. It's not dramatic. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't show off. It just exists, strong and subtle, still and powerful. When someone is really at peace, they don't chase chaos. They don't entertain unnecessary conversations. They don't explain their every move. Because peace isn't performative. It's private. It's personal. And when you've truly found it, you become very selective about who you let close to it. Not everyone deserves access to that version of you. The healed, steady, self-aware version. When you begin to walk in peace, people may accuse you of being distant. They may say you've changed, and you have. You've stopped entertaining what doesn't align with your soul. You've stopped responding just because someone called your name. You've stopped showing up in places where your spirit feels out of place. And while others might not understand it, you're not obligated to make them. Your job is not to convince anyone of your healing. Your job is to live it. Explaining your peace to people who only know how to function in dysfunction is like speaking a language they've never learned. They won't hear you clearly, no matter how many times you say it. And the more you try to explain, the more you invite confusion and resistance. So you learn to stop talking and start walking. Not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. You walk away from conversations that only aim to stir up old wounds. You step back from situations that pull you out of character. You don't match energy anymore. You protect your own. Sometimes silence is the only boundary you need. You don't need to say, I'm done. You don't need to announce, I'm pulling back. You don't even need to declare, I'm healing. Your lack of engagement is the message. Your peace is the statement. And those who truly care, those who truly understand, won't need the explanation. They'll feel the shift. They'll respect the distance. They'll honor your silence. And even if they don't, you still don't owe them anything. Not your energy, not your attention, not your reaction. Because when you've fought to find peace, when you've climbed out of places that tried to bury you in confusion and hurt, you don't hand it over just because someone doesn't like how quiet you become. You don't explain why you didn't respond to the text. You don't justify why you didn't show up to the argument. You don't elaborate on why your silence is your shield. You simply continue on, unbothered, focused, at peace. That's the strength most people won't understand. The strength to not show up to every fight you're invited to. The strength to not always have the last word. The strength to choose inner calm over outward confrontation. And it's not that you don't care. It's that you care enough about your own soul not to let it be dragged back into places it's already outgrown. So the next time someone questions your silence, remember this piece doesn't always need a voice. Sometimes its greatest expression is in what you don't say, what you don't engage with, what you don't respond to. Let them misunderstand. Let them speculate. Let them assume. You have nothing to prove. Your peace is the proof. There's something profoundly powerful about not reacting. In a world where reaction is often mistaken for strength, where the loudest voice is assumed to be the right one, and where outrage is used as currency, choosing not to react can look like weakness. But in reality, it's anything but. It's the highest form of control. It's the quiet assurance of someone who knows exactly who they are and doesn't need to prove it to anyone. It's the decision to take back power that others try so hard to provoke from you. People will test you. Life will test you. Not once, not twice, but again and again. They'll come for your peace, for your joy, for your patience. They'll say things that were designed to sting, post things meant to poke, and do things meant to get under your skin. And when they don't get the reaction they were hoping for, when you stay calm, when you stay kind, when you stay silent, that's when you realize not reacting isn't ignoring, it's winning. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to let someone else's negativity dictate your next move. Because the moment you let someone provoke you into responding, you hand over control. You give them a seat at your table, and not everyone deserves that access. Not everyone is entitled to a reply. Some people just want a show, and silence is the way you close the curtain on their performance. When you don't give them the reaction, you end the performance before it begins. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings or deny your truth. It means you choose how, when, and if your energy is worth the exchange. Not everything needs a response. Not every insult needs to be corrected. Not every rumor needs to be addressed. Some battles are won in stillness. Some victories happen in restraint. And when you learn how to be selective with your energy, you begin to preserve the parts of yourself that used to get drained by proving a point. There's a maturity that silence teaches you, a wisdom that doesn't show up when your emotions are loud. In the stillness, you learn to observe instead of react. You learn to wait instead of retaliate. You learn that not every action deserves your equal response. Because what's the point of reacting if it only pulls you out of character? What's the point of defending yourself to people who have already decided how they want to see you? There are people who thrive on reaction. They poke, prod, and provoke because they feed off the energy it brings. They don't want understanding, they want attention. And when you realize that, you stop giving them one thing they're hungry for, your response. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to make people see your heart when they've already closed their eyes. And in doing so, you reclaim your peace. Sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is no move at all. Not because you're passive, but because you're in control. You're not the enemy cold, you're being calculated. You're not weak, you're wise. You understand that the loudest voice in the room doesn't always carry the most truth. And that sometimes silence says more than words ever could. When you don't react, You allow your actions, your consistency, your character to speak for you. And those speak louder and longer than any one-time reply ever could. Think about how many times reacting only made things worse. How many times you replayed the conversation in your head, wishing you had said less, done less, given less energy to a moment that didn't deserve it. Those are the lessons silence teach us. The strength to pause, the patience to process, the power to protect what's valuable, your energy, your joy, your progress. People will notice your silence. Some will be confused by it. Some will be offended. They'll assume you're weak or scared or arrogant. Let them. Your job isn't to control their interpretation. Your job is to protect your transformation. You're not here to explain your silence. You're here to live your truth, quietly, boldly, fully. And those who are aligned with you, those who see the real you, they'll understand without a single word spoken. You reach a level in life where peace becomes more valuable than proving a point. You realize that the real flex isn't in reacting. It's in not needing to. It's walking away when everything in you wants to fight. It's letting your success do the speaking. It's allowing time to reveal what your mouth no longer needs to defend. And when you learn to live like that, when silence becomes your strength instead of your struggle, you step into a power that can't be shaken. So the next time you feel the urge to react, pause, breathe, remember who you are. And if that moment doesn't deserve your voice, don't give it. Not reacting is not surrendering. It's choosing to win a battle they never saw coming. The one where your silence speaks louder than anything you could have said. Not every reaction is a response, and not every silence is surrender. Sometimes silence is strategy. It's power dressed in patience. It's confidence clothed in calm. It's knowing exactly what you could say, how you could clap back, how you could flip the narrative. But choosing not to. Not because you don't have the words, but because you understand the weight of them. You understand that true strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it says nothing at all and still shifts the atmosphere. There's a reason storms make noise, but the sun rises in silence. One comes to cause chaos, the other to bring clarity. You've got to decide which one you want to be. People will test you. Life will test you. They'll throw shade just to see if you'll dim your light. They'll stir up noise just to see if you'll lose your voice. And in those moments, silence is not a sign of retreat. It's a signal that you've already risen above the level of their game. When people come for you, when they try to provoke you, they're often expecting a reaction they can feed off. They want to pull you out of character so they can say, "See, I knew you weren't real. I knew you'd snap." And if you give them that reaction, you're playing right into their plan. But when you stay silent, when you remain grounded, you flip the script. You disarm their weapon. You don't lose your cool, you raise your standard. Silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom in action. You've got to know when to speak and when to stay still. Not everything deserves your breath. Not every comment warrants your reply. Some things are so beneath your purpose that responding to them only pulls you out of alignment. And you've come too far, ground too much, healed too deeply to let a moment of madness rob you of that. When you choose silence, you're not avoiding the battle. You're choosing not to fight a war that's already beneath your victory. The world teaches you that if you don't speak, you'll be seen as passive. If you don't clap back, you'll look soft. But here's the truth. Anyone can react. It takes real power to respond with nothing but peace. Silence takes strength, self-control, discipline. Because it's not easy to stay still when everything in you wants to shout. It's not easy to hold your tongue when you know exactly how to cut someone with it. But silence is often the most surgical tool. It slices through nonsense without ever making a sound. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to respond to everything thrown at you to prove your worth. Sometimes the most impactful thing you do is remain silent and let your life speak louder than your words ever could. There's a wisdom in knowing when your voice is needed and when your silence says it all. Because silence doesn't mean you're afraid. It means you're focused. It doesn't mean you're ignoring the situation. It means you're choosing not to let it control your emotions. In a world that's constantly screaming for attention, choosing to be still is a sign of deep strength. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need validation to feel valuable. There's something beautiful of not defending yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You begin to realize that the battle isn't with them. It's within. It's not about silencing the outside noise. It's about quieting the internal desire to always be understood. There will always be critics, always be doubters, always be people who misjudge your silence as weakness. Let them, because their opinion doesn't determine your reality, and their misunderstanding doesn't diminish your truth. What they say about you behind your back loses its power the moment you stop turning around to hear it. You've got to protect your peace like it's the most expensive thing you own, because it is. And every time you respond to pettiness, every time you react to something that doesn't deserve your energy, you're trading a piece of that peace for something temporary. You can't afford that. The enemy put on you not when you've worked so hard to get here, not when you've cried your way through storms and grown your way through pain, not when silence is the very thing that held you together when everything around you is trying to pull you apart. Sometimes the reason you're being provoked isn't because you're weak. It's because you're powerful. You threaten the comfort of others simply by being who you are. Your grace agitates the ones who rely on chaos. Your peace is a problem to those who live off conflict. And so they'll poke and prod and push, hoping you'll break character, hoping you'll stoop down, hoping you'll respond in a way that validates their version of you. But the real you doesn't need to be loud to be heard. The real you doesn't need to fight every fight to be strong. The real you knows that silence is sometimes the loudest response you can give. You begin to understand that not all growth is visible. Sometimes it's in the quiet decisions, the unspoken self-control, the arguments you walk away from, the temptations you don't entertain, the revenge you don't seek. That's growth. That's maturity. That's power. And when you start moving with that level of intentionality, you don't get pulled into everything that tries to pull you out of character. You see through the noise. You recognize the traps. And instead of reacting, you rise. Instead of proving a point, you protect your peace. The silence you carry becomes a message. One that says, I don't owe you a response. I don't owe you an explanation. I don't need to match your energy to prove my own. You begin to value your inner world so much that you stop inviting outer chaos into it. And that's when you truly start living from a place of purpose, not reaction. Because you realize that your calling is too great to keep pausing it for distractions. Your destiny is too important to keep defending it to people who were never meant to understand it. There will be moments when people try to bait you into battles that have nothing to do with where you're going. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them believe what they want. You weren't built to convince. You were built to carry purpose, to carry grace, to carry the kind of peace that makes no sense to people who've only ever known chaos. And when you walk in that kind of posture, silence isn't just a response. It's a strategy. It's how you win without saying a word. It's how you move forward without leaving footprints of frustration behind you. And maybe that's the whole point. Maybe silence isn't the absence of a voice, but the presence of power. Maybe it's how you communicate strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance, authority without noise. Because the truth is, those who truly know their worth don't waste time proving it. They live it, quietly, consistently. And the results speak louder than any defense ever could. So keep your peace. Guard your energy. Don't let the noise distract you from the work. Let your silence be the proof that you're operating on a different level. Let it be the sign that you've outgrown the need for constant validation, that you've graduated from reaction to revelation. Because silence when chosen with purpose, isn't a lack of power. It's the ultimate display of it. Thanks a lot of you. God bless you with good health.